Oregon has one of the best wide receiver rooms in the country in 2024. And I think it's going to stay that way after the season, too. Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. So if you have not already, please like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to or watch this show, which today is brought to you by our friends over at Nissan. That is right, Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. Got Jared Mack coming on the show later. Spring football and some extensive baseball talk. For all of you baseball fans, I know there are many of you out there. I am among them. But we start with the receiver room. Oregon's in 2024 is going to be really good. I mean, really, really good. Last year's was excellent, and everyone's back except Troy Franklin, and you replaced Troy Franklin with a former five-star recruit in Evan Stewart, who could have a monstrous season for the Ducks. And this position has been really well recruited by the Ducks in the last couple of cycles, really the last several years, frankly. And I think the receiver rooms, especially from the Mario Cristobal era, have been one of the biggest leaps forward with the new coaching staff. And Junior Adams is at the heart of that, of course, because he's Oregon's wide receivers coach and co-offensive coordinator. He has done a fantastic job. And I think in 2024, you've got a returning 1,000-yard receiver in Tez Johnson. You've got Gary Bryant Jr. and Trayshawn Holden behind him on the depth chart. You've got a five-star in Jurion Dickey, who hopefully is fully healthy going into spring football. You've got Kyler Casper in the room, who was a highly touted recruit. He reclassified to 2022 and, is going into now a redshirt sophomore year. We'll see if he's able to crack the depth chart, and Evan Stewart probably at the top. So that's as deep of a wide receiver room as I can remember Oregon having, including last year, by the way, because if you've got a healthy Jurion Dickey who's just waiting in the wings, that's something that the Ducks did not have a season ago. Now, is Troy Franklin the best receiver Oregon's had in my lifetime? Probably. He just had the best individual season that I've seen from an Oregon wideout, and I think this is something that should be expected to continue, the way that they've recruited this position, and Junior Adams has been at the heart of it, coming over from Washington, where he recruited such guys like Roma Dunes and I believe Jalen McMillan and Jalen Polk. I think he was the receivers coach, if memory serves, when all of those guys committed to the Huskies. He did very well, both in recruiting and development. So Peyton asked the question, how did Junior Adams not get an offer to go elsewhere? And so my answer to that question is, who's to say that he didn't? Who's to say that Junior Adams wasn't called by X, Y, or Z school and offered the opportunity to go be their receivers coach or maybe an offensive coordinator? Now, this can depend on a couple of factors. Number one, and perhaps this is the most important reason that Oregon has been able to keep Junior Adams, who has been, again, a staple in both the recruiting and developmental aspects of his positional job. Does he want to be a full-time offensive coordinator? Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. If he doesn't have that sort of desire, Oregon could keep him around, I think, for quite a while. Because if you're talking about recruiting as a position coach and trying to really establish an identity at a school, Junior Adams has done a really good job. He's done a fantastic job. Troy Franklin's going to be the highest drafted Oregon wide receiver, I think, ever. Someone can fact check me on that, but if Franklin goes early second round, I cannot recall an Oregon wide out being drafted that high. Oregon receivers don't even usually get drafted, but that is going to be, I think, the expectation with the way they've recruited and the way that he continues to develop and produce on the field with his players going forward. And if he doesn't have a desire to be an offensive coordinator, how many jobs out there are better than Oregon at that particular position? Yeah, Ohio State is certainly in the mix. Yeah, your Alabamas and Texas, Georgia, probably a couple other SEC programs, maybe like LSU. But Oregon's a pretty darn good spot to be. And this staff has recruited as well or better, frankly, with this most recent recruiting cycle as any staff at Oregon ever has, including Mario Cristobal's staff, which, as we know, was a great recruiting unit. And Junior Adams is really a key piece as to why Oregon is recruiting at its highest level ever. 2024 class, highest rated in program history. And so, program history. And guys like Gatlin Bear are near the top of that list. And the blue chip receiver prospects are just rolling it over and over again. And I'm excited to see how they produce on the field. So I think that's the first part of it. And then the second part of it is Dan Lanning had, there was an announcement that, Oregon had increased its salary pool for its assistants. And I don't know all the details about where all of that money went, but certainly there was a report, I think by James Crepea of the Oregonian, that at least one position coach was making $1 million. I think just one, but still, that's a lot of money for a position coach. I don't know if it was Junior Adams. It could have been Carlos Laughlin. Laughlin would be my guess for a position coach there, but I can't say that for certain. Adams would certainly be close because he has been excellent. So I think that Lanning has understood how good Junior Adams has been and wants to keep him around. And I don't think there are other opportunities that are coming Junior Adams' way that would be so much better than what he's got at Oregon. And I think he's really starting to build something in, more of an identity as Oregon kind of shifts their recruiting prowess at that position in the long run. So I love what he's done, and I hope Oregon keeps him around because I think the results on the field really speak for themselves. And Oregon, as I said, is going to have one of the best receiving units in all of college football this year. Like bringing in Evan Stewart, huge. Bringing back your next three guys from a year ago, and then the true or redshirt freshmen that could push for playing time this year. Yeah, I think it's been really good. And remember, Jeremiah McLaughlin was a flip from Ohio State. That's wide receiver U. And he flipped from the Buckeyes to the Ducks. Ryan Pelham going to play for Lincoln Riley at USC. Nope, he's going to come play for Oregon instead. So the results have been absolutely fantastic. On that note, this question came in from Lucas Goldman. Do you think Oregon's possible receiving core in 2026, now we're thinking ahead, Dallas Wilson, Jurion Dickey, Gatlin Bear, Kyler Casper could be the best in the school's history, could be an experienced Dante Moore throwing to those guys? Who could be throwing for the Ducks behind center in 2026? That's a loaded question right there. But let's just presume for a moment that it is second-year starter Dante Moore. I think that group of players you listed, frankly, I'd be surprised if they're all on Oregon's roster at that time, right? Dallas Wilson's coming in the 2025 cycle. Gatlin Bear won't be a part of Oregon's team until 2026 because he's going on a 2-year mission. But I don't know about the best in school history because I'm looking at this past year's unit. Man, that was really good. And I look at what this year's unit could be. Oh, they could be great as well. But certainly the potential is there, and the recruiting prowess has been there to continue churning out high-level units. And I think Gatlin Bear can be the next Troy Franklin. That's who I compared him to when I look at his film and what he profiles as a college receiver. And I think that's a fantastic place to be. But between Jurion Dickey and Kyler Casper, I'd be more than a little surprised if both are on the roster in 2026 for various reasons. Dickey could pop and go to the NFL. Casper might not see the field, could hit the transfer portal perhaps. But, certainly I don't wish that. I've always been very high on Kyler Casper, and I hope he gets a bigger chance this year. But it's going to be really, really hard to crack the depth chart. Spring football starts today. First practice for the Ducks. Are we actually going to learn that much? Maybe not, but what should we expect? We'll talk about that with Jared Mack after we talk about our friends at Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class-exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure, or you can check out the Nissan Pathfinder or the Nissan Armada, which both seat up to 8. Boy, and big time towing and power. The Pathfinder, for instance, 6,000 pounds of towing. When adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop at nissanusa.com. That's nissanusa.com. Joining me now here on Locked On Ducks, Jared Mack, 24/7 Sports and the Autzen Audibles podcast. Fun fact, we graduated college in the same year. I don't know which one of us is older, Jared, because I haven't asked you when your birthday is, but we'll just leave it out there and say that I am older for purposes that I don't even know quite yet.
You can ask me what my birthday is. That's fine. I'm an October baby.
It's a big rest. Ooh, I got you then. I got you. Early September, right here, right by the cutoff date. But we're here to talk football. You'll be on the ground with spring football starting later today. There are only a couple of days of practice, and then Oregon goes on spring break, and then they return, and it picks up in earnest. But what are you most looking forward to seeing out there in Eugene once the Ducks hit the field?
Yeah, I think it's kind of obvious, but just seeing the newcomers, seeing the true freshmen who are there, seeing the transfers, just seeing, frankly, who's there, what they look like, what position groups that they're repping in. I'm sure there's going to be some positional versatility with guys like in the secondary, but I'm just interested to see what they look like. There's a lot of guys that could be potential like day one impact players on the defensive line from the true freshman class. Obviously, you get your transfer class, you expect them to be day one impact guys, but you're not exactly sure what it's going to look like, what they're going to look like. So I think that's like the obvious kind of most exciting thing that I'm looking forward to going into spring football. Other than that, it's just what the intensity is like, because there's, again, like you said, there's 2 days of practice, Thursday and then on Saturday, and then there's a 2-week break. So it's like, you guys really jumping into it? Like, what's it really going to be like? Just because with that 2-week break, then you're just not sure what it's going to really look like. So last year they jumped right into it. That was Dan Lanning's second year at the helm. They went right into it. It was for spring ball. So I expect it to be very similar, but it's always something that I'm kind of looking out for, is just how intense is it going to be in day one, and how intense is it going to look like to the true freshmen and the newcomers who haven't been part of the actual football experience yet at Oregon.
The Ducks under Dan Lanning have historically been, shall we say, tight-lipped. Is that the appropriate term, kind of with information and depth charts or answering questions and such? So through these first couple of days, how much should Oregon fans expect to actually know or find out? Is it just going to be kind of, brief observations? How much media access will you guys have? How much can you actually get here in the couple of days that you'll see?
Probably not a lot. The official word on our media access has yet to be announced, so I believe we're going to get into at least one of two practices. What they do during those practices is yet to be seen, but I would imagine there's not going to be a lot of detailed information on some of the things that everybody's looking forward to. We don't get to watch much during the fall. Last year, we didn't get to watch much during the spring, so I think we'll get some like remedial information about what's going on, but real details and how this guy really looks during a game like scenario, or what he looks like during position drills, we're probably not going to be able to see, but we'll get a better understanding for sure of what the team will look like come fall. And then obviously there's the other the transfer portal window in the spring, so that'll be even more added nonsense going on, but it'll be a mix of both. We'll get some information, but not as detailed, I think, as we all would hope.
So with Oregon going into spring football here, what I talked about on yesterday's show is the groups that I'm most interested to see are the defensive line and the secondary. I think that those groups have a lot of questions, and you touched on the positional versatility aspect for the secondary. Brian Smith, our Locked On recruiting insider, said he thinks Sione Laulea is a guy that could maybe have, or not maybe, he thinks he could have the potential to move from corner to safety. I think the two deep in the secondary is up in the air, especially with the safeties. I think you know who the starters are going to be. I think you got Brandon Johnson at nickel, Tyshim Johnson will be a safety, Kobe Savage, but then the guys who are after them, I think that's, you could have a true freshman, you could have redshirt freshmen, you could have guys move around. Does anybody stick out to you as a candidate to, make the switch from corner to safety, the inverse Triquez Bridges, if you will?
Yes, the inverse Triquez Bridges. I we'll say forever that I wish Tre'Quez Bridges played safety during his time at Oregon, but it only happened during one spring football. I think Dante Manning could be a guy who could make the change. I like the Siona Laulea perspective because he's a big, tall guy who has cover skills and could go out and play free safety, which I think is something that's really missing in Oregon's safety room right now. I think Manning could make that switch. He's not like 6'5" or anything like that, but he's a solid size and he's a good cover corner. I think that his coverage skills is probably best suited as a safety where he's not covering at all times, but can play a lot of zone and can kind of range and use his physicality to really help him out there on the perimeter and come downhill in the run game. But I think you're right that the idea of adding a safety is probably going to come from the cornerback room because of just all the talent that they've assembled over the last couple of seasons. And, this offseason was no different. They get Cam Alexander and Jabbar Muhammad into the cornerback room. Like, yes, they lose Tre'Quez Bridges and Kyrie Jackson, but you land two guys in the transfer portal who could easily replace what those guys produced last season. And then you still have all the freshmen from a year ago and Roderick Pleasant and Dalen Austin. Then you add Dakota Fields, Ifeoma Degwu, and I'm forgetting Siona Laulea as a JUCO guy. And so the talent there is immense. And they only get to play two of those on the field at one time. So I like the Laulea idea. I like potentially Dante Manning moving over there. I think that's going to be one of the biggest things I look out for on day 1 or 2 is just who's playing where, and specifically, you also mentioned defensive line, like who's the interior D line, what that looks like, and then what's the rotation look like down at corner and safety.
Yeah, I think the D line is curious as well, just because you've got all of those guys, and I don't think from a recruiting standpoint in that 2023 cycle, anyone on paper stands out the most. From a snap count standpoint, I think Amari Washington's the guy who played the most amongst guys like Johnny Bowens or Terrence Green. So maybe Washington is one of the top guys in there, but that was also at the end of last season. We don't know how guys have progressed in their off-season workouts, how they're going to look in spring practice, or how they'll go, or how they'll look getting more reps and everything like that. But do you have any predictions on who you think stands out the most on the interior, and where do you see Aiden Breland fitting in?
I'll start with Breland. I see Breland fitting in as a pure D tackle, kind of what that, I guess, kind of that Brandon Dorlus role. Even though Brandon was really versatile in the D line, like I think you would still line him up as a D tackle at points. Maybe like what Casey Rogers was, not necessarily a nose. Like he's not the biggest of bodies, but he's still a big boy and he can get down low and can rush the passer while also stopping the run. So I think Breland kind of fits in as a true D tackle. I'm not sure what his play or snap count is going to look like this season. You're right about Washington. Like he was the number 1 like defensive lineman from a season ago. And for as vaunted as that class was, bringing in all those 4-star kids, like all the guys Oregon is bringing in on the defensive line are just the same, if not much better this year in this recruiting cycle. So it's going to be real competition down there. Breland's going to be certainly a part of it. For me, I predicted that, Amari Washington and Ben Roberts would be the 1 and 2 for the nose tackle spot. And opposite of Jamar Caldwell, the Houston transfer, who'd be playing defensive tackle in my fictitious 4-2-5 defense. And I like it, obviously, because I'm the one who put it there. But there's a lot of question marks. Guys like Amari Washington, like even though, like you said, that was last year. Like I thought he looked good, and I talked to Dan Lanning at the Fiesta Bowl about it, and he was really complimentary of his progress through his freshman season. But we got to see what it looks like in games when he's getting 20 to 30 reps every single game, not just 80 reps over the course of the entire season. Ben Roberts, kind of the same thing. Then you still got guys like Mikael Gardner and Terrence Green, Johnny Bowens, who I think is more of a defensive end, but guys who are relatively unproven, or not relatively, just straight up unproven, where they all have 20 to 30 snaps under their name. So I think that's going to be one of the more intriguing parts. I also think where they line up is going to be intriguing. Like, I have Jamar Caldwell as a defensive tackle. He's a big boy. He's like 6'2", 320, 330 pounds. Like, he could slide over to nose, but, I think his talents are best suited at defensive tackle. Well, do I know anything? Probably not. But what does Dan Lanning think? What does Tosh Lupoy think? Like, where does he want to be in this system? Or where does Jordan Birch want to line up? What do the edges look like with Mateo and Blake and Tatum Tuioti? Like, there's a lot of question marks in the D line, and trying to predict and figure out what those rotations are going to look like and the positional versatility, like kind of just you're throwing darts out there. It's tough, but that and the secondary, like I said, are going to be the two of my biggest things, like going into these first 2 days, and then 2 weeks after, whenever we get back. I think that's a lot of question marks that could be answered pretty quick, or we'll go into like week 3 of spring camp and be like, well, I still don't know.
Yeah, I think once the spring game rolls around, it's going to be the number one thing that I look for is which the defensive linemen are holding their own, not getting moved off the line of scrimmage, getting pressure on the quarterback. I think Ashton Porter is a really interesting guy because I think he can line up a little bit like Dorless, both inside and out. And I'm really curious to see how they use him and how he's able to work himself into the rotation. I remember covering here on the show when he committed, and our recruiting analyst at the time, John Garcia, thought he was one of the highest floor prospects in that 2023 class. Felt like he was really ready to contribute right away. Of course, he, didn't play a big role last year, but I'm interested to see how that all kind of shakes out. Also interested to get Jared's thoughts on the recent baseball game and more for the Ducks in the upcoming series against Cal. We will most definitely be getting to that here on the show. After we get to Amazon Fire TV, of course, your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies, TV episodes, as well as free and live television. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball, which is right around the corner. I'm very excited as a Mariners fan. I'm getting my hopes up again. They're sucking me right back in after they kicked me to the curb metaphorically as a fan last year. College basketball tournament, whatever it is, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. And Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us here at the Locked On Network and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. March Madness, NBA, Major League Baseball, and lots more, not to mention news, entertainment, gaming, travel, and cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. To learn more, visit amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. That's www.amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. Let's talk some baseball, Jared. You cover it better than anybody that I am aware of, and I know there are a lot of fans out there who, especially after last season's run to the Super Regional, started to grow the fandom for the sport, and I'm so here for it. I'm so here for it all the time. I love college baseball. My a friend of mine loves Omaha, Nebraska more than any place in the world, just because there's only one thing that you could ever want to do. See, that's the appropriate reaction to Omaha, Nebraska.
Right, whatever.
It's all right, but it does have a truly fantastic sporting event. Oregon was knocking on the door last year. Let's start with Tuesday's game against Portland. I was more than a little surprised when I saw the score, and it was 15-5. Now, it's a Tuesday game, probably not rolling out your number one guy traditionally, but a home game against a good but not dominant WCC team at this point in the season in Portland. What happened on Tuesday?
It's from the very jump. I think Portland's a really good hitting team, and they showcased their talents on Tuesday. The very first pitch of the game, Brady Bean hit out for a home run to dead center. That kind of just set the tone. Oregon's pitching, I talked to head coach Mark Wazakowski afterwards and just said like it was a lot of fastball missed locations and just frankly throwing it down the middle of the plate. And from my vantage point, I saw the same thing. Portland was not missing. These were, fastballs that were probably topping out at 92 miles an hour. Like anybody can square that up in the D1 level. It doesn't matter if you're in the Pac-12, ACC, WCC, doesn't matter. Like those are balls that are able to be hit. And Turner Spoljarek, the Tuesday starter, just got lit up. 6 hits, 5 earned, and then his backup or his relief pitcher, Brian Featherston, came in. Same thing. I think he went 2 1/3, 4 or 5 hits, another 4 or 5 runs. Just poor pitching. And Oregon's offense was really good through the first 4 innings. Like they had 5 runs in the first 4 and then went scoreless over the next 5. So there is some things to put into it, like there's just poor execution on the pitching side of the ball. Like this is the second or third straight outing for Turner Spoljarek where he's just kind of gotten rocked. I'm not sure what it's going to be like for him for like the next couple weeks. Like, is he going to continue to be the midweek starter because Oregon's going to have a couple more midweek games? Are they going to let him kind of figure his stuff out in the bullpen, maybe not start him in a midweek game for a week or two? Like, that's something to think about. The arms that they threw get into games every once in a while. They're not the best arms. Featherston actually, what probably was the best of the bunch to get in there, and he got lit up. But again, I think that's a good Portland team. They made it to the WCC championships last season, just missed out on getting into the tournament. It's not what you think a Portland team would be. Jake Holcroft hit a double in the second inning, and that broke the school record for career hits. Like, there's some good bats on the team. I was impressed by how they played, but not overly impressive for Oregon. A lot of fan reaction on social media. It's college baseball. Like, there's still 40 games left in the season. This is not your college basketball year where if Oregon men's or women's were to lose to Portland, like, that would, basically destroy their chances of getting into the NCAA tournament. Like, Oregon's going to face Cal this weekend, who are 10-3. Like, the Pac-12 seems like a good league this year again. Obviously, Oregon State's the best of the bunch, but it's going to be a good league. And if Oregon can still finish in that 3rd to 4th range in the league, like, they'll be in the tournament. And they'll be, depending on how good the league is, if they're at 3rd or 4th, like, they could be competing to host a regional. But that's a long way away. And Tuesday was a learning experience for sure. I'm excited to see what they look like come out on Friday night. Like, Tuesday was their 5th game in a week, or their 6th game in a week. Excuse me. It's tough at some point, but they got 2 rest days, and then Friday they take on Cal.
Yeah, I thought that their road series in the desert was really good, sweeping the 2-game set midweek with GCU, and then scrapping on Saturday to have an opportunity to win the series on Sunday against Arizona State in the Pac-12 opener, and to pull that off, I thought was a really, really good mark. I think anytime you got a 5-game road trip and you win 4 of those games, I don't really care who you're playing because, like Jared said, it's baseball. Like, it's college baseball, pro baseball, whatever. You're not going to win every single game, and you just want to keep stacking up series wins any chance that you can, and definitely avoid getting swept because that can allow things to snowball sometimes. But you've done a great job covering this team for the last couple of years. All you baseball fans out there, I cover it from afar as best I can, but Jared is on the ground doing yeoman's work out there. So if you want to follow him on X at Jared_Mac7, that's your best Oregon baseball follow to be sure. But this has been a theme with Mark Wasikowski's teams. They can always hit, which as a Mariners fan is very odd to have a team that hits the ball over and over and over again, but struggles in the pitching department. Watching this team and this program for the last couple of years, which I think is in a really good spot. Oregon at 11-5, and we're feeling like, they're okay, doing fine, doing so. I think that's a great place to be. Why isn't the pitching improving compared to the last couple of years? Or do you think it's improving and it's just kind of early in the season?
I think it's leaps and bounds better than it was last year. Like, it may not look like it on games like Tuesday nights where it's 15 runs to Portland, but it's so much better than it was a season ago. Again, like, I covered all 60 games that they played last year, and they were starting 3 true freshmen Friday, Saturday, Sunday for the first long time of the season, probably like the first 8 weeks, and then Jay Stoffel eventually. He had an injury early on in the season, came back, and then was dominant for like a 4-week run. And then he had another injury where he was out for the rest of the season with a hand injury, something nervy. And it was terrible. I mean, this pitching staff in 2024 is significantly better. They have a lot of arms in the bullpen. Guys who, didn't even get to pitch last week in the 5 games where you're like, I still kind of like him. Like, he still can hit like 93 and has a good slider. Like, they didn't have any of that last season. And the rotation has been pretty iffy to start the year in RJ Gordon and either Grayson Grinsill or Toby Twist out of the left-hand spot, or Kevin Sider. But every once in a while, those guys can go for like 6 innings and give you 2 earned runs and strike out 6. Like, that wasn't happening last year. It just wasn't. And that's the biggest difference, because this team isn't the offensive profile that they were a season ago. You had Drew Cowley and Tanner Smith and Sabine Ceballos and Jacob Walsh, and Colby Shade and Riku Nishida, like all these guys were really, really good. Gavin Grant too, don't want to forget him. All
They
those
didn't
guys
have
were great.
Jeffrey Hurd, though, I tell you.
No Hurd, yeah, no Jeff Hurd, but you know, Jeff would have just been another name in the lineup last year. I
Yeah,
hate to
I
say it.
agree.
Like I love Jeff. He's a wonderful person and he's a tremendous hitter, but they were stacked to the brim last year, and that's the only way that they won games. I mean, multiple times a season ago, they were down by 6 or more runs in the first 2 innings and came back and won. Like that's not how you're supposed to play baseball. It can work because it's college baseball, and you might not be playing the best of guys, but it's not how it's supposed to work. And I don't think that's going to happen this year because of the pitching staff. Like, yeah, they may face an early deficit. They did against Arizona State. I think it was 4-1 on Sunday. But it's not going to get that bad. And come later in the Pac-12 play, that's going to help a lot because there's a lot of guys in the lineup who just haven't clicked. And like Jeffrey Hurd has been really carrying. Same with Jacob Walsh. They've been awesome to start the season. Drew Smith has to click. Justin Casella is up and down. You know, a guy like Dominic Hellman, who's really struggled to start the year, still has the offensive firepower and the potential to like carry a lineup for a week. Antoneros has been a nice shot in the arm in the last couple of days. Like, there's still some guys who have to click and who are working on their swing and just trying to get better. Who, if they do click, then the offense becomes a real threat in the Pac-12. But you know, I really like the pitching staff, and I sat through a lot of games last year where it was a tough watch from a former pitcher. 6 to 8 walks in an outing. You know, outings not even going 2 innings where they give up 6 to 8 runs. Like it was about as bad as it gets. And this year, when somebody is doing poorly at the start of a game, head coach Mark Wasikowski will not wait to go to the bullpen. He will go out there because he trusts the arms that he has. Last year, he didn't have anybody to trust in the bullpen other than their closer. And when you're in the second inning, that doesn't help. So I think it's a lot better than it was last season. I know that was a very long way of saying that, but I think Tuesday games against Portland happen, but they don't happen a lot with this pitching staff.
Yeah, I think the bullpen has been pretty solid. I think they've got a nice diversity of arms. They've got a couple flamethrowers, and his name is escaping me right now, but the lefty from Gonzaga who's got
Bradley
kind of
Mullen.
Mullen. He's got kind of a funky delivery, but
Very
if
funky,
you roll
yeah.
out someone who can touch 96 and then you bring that guy out, I think that can be really tough for hitters to adjust to, especially if you can get multiple innings out of someone who throws a little bit harder. But I like where this Oregon team is at. I don't think it's a perfect start by any means. Would have liked to have seen him get at least one more game against UC Santa Barbara in the home series. But I think as the bats start to heat up, I think Oregon's going to be fine. But I think we'll learn a good amount. Just kind of your quick closing thoughts here, Jared, on this series against Cal and what it means for where they sit in the season right now.
Yeah, I think it's an important series. I think it's definitely more important after this midweek loss to Portland. Cal's pretty good. They're 10-3. They just swept UCLA, although UCLA is bad this year. I think they're 5-10. They just lost to UConn last night. Like, not exactly your father's UCLA. They had a tournament in Vegas. They lost to Cal did. They lost to Ohio State. They lost to Pittsburgh. I'm looking at it right now. Like, it's kind of up and down. There's some questionable losses in there. I think they lost to Boston College by a couple runs, but they, they swept UConn, which is a good program out there back east. And so I think it's an important 3-game set for Oregon. If they start out 4-2 in conference play, let's say they go 2-1 against Cal, like that's solid. That's a good start. I think Cal's a sleeper team in the Pac-12. I don't think anybody was really high on them. A lot of picks for Arizona and USC, and a couple of teams have really struggled out of the gates here. If you're Oregon, you need to take advantage of that and continue winning and continue boosting your Pac-12 record so you can get a higher seed in the Pac-12 tournament come May. So I think it's an important series. I think it's a really important series for their starters to get back on check. Like, this is a pretty good offense that Cal is rolling in with. And if RJ or Toby Twist or Kevin Sider or whoever takes the Saturday spot, like, they can go out there and shove for 6 innings and give up 2 or 3 runs, strike out 5 or 6. Like, I think that'll do a lot of confidence boosting for the rest of the pitching staff and for the offense. You just need that at one point. And I think the longest start of the season outside of throwing against Lafayette's like 4 innings. So, or it was RJ last week. It was 5 1/3. So needs to just be a little bit more consistent. And I think Cal is a good opportunity to at least demonstrate that you can do that. But I think it'll be a fun series. I'm excited to see the Golden Bears come back to Eugene.
Jared Mack, the best follow for Oregon baseball at Jared_Mack7 on X, formerly known as Twitter. Jared, appreciate it. Thanks for coming by.
Thanks, Wetzer. Appreciate it.
Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, go Ducks.